Welcome once again to another edition of Education for the 21st Century. This is a monthly podcast brought to you by the College of Education here at Lehigh University. On this program, we focus on challenging issues facing education in our system and society today. We bring attention to various kinds of issues in areas such as educational leadership, school and community, innovation in education, research to practice, and take a look at social and cultural dynamics in schools. And we bring all this together in this particular forum to discuss challenges and present solutions. Today, we are very, very excited to welcome the new Dean of the College of Education here at Lehigh University, Dr. Bill Gaudelli.
Thank you, Floyd. Dr. Beecham.
Just a little bit of background, if you don't mind. Dr. Bill Gaudelli joined the Lehigh family July 2018 as the Dean of the College of Education. Dean Gaudelli's career spans more than 25 years as a classroom teacher, researcher, professor, and seasoned administrator. As a prominent international scholar, his research targets global citizenship education and teacher education and development. Dr. Gaudelli most recently served as the chair of the Department of Arts and Humanities at Teachers College, Columbia University. Prior to his department chair role, he was both faculty member and program director of the Social Studies program. We are thrilled to welcome you today.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Bill, first, could you tell us a little bit about your background and sort of the pathway that brought you to this point?
Sure, happy to do it. So I began as a classroom teacher soon after graduating Rutgers undergrad in 1990, and I taught for 10 years. I taught a world studies course that I was hired to teach in Hunterdon County, not too far away from here, just a bit south in New Jersey. And that course was, in a lot of ways, transformative for me because it required me to sort of change and grow as an educator and do things outside of the preparation that I had done as a teacher or for teaching. And so it was an incredible growth opportunity. And I began to understand teaching as very much about the educative growth of the teacher as much as the students. Mm-hmm. And so that led me to think about teacher development as a core part of my work. Mm-hmm. I then did my doctorate at Rutgers, and I taught as an adjunct at Teachers College for 2 years. Thereafter, I went on to the University of Central Florida and became an assistant professor, earned tenure, and immediately left the University of Central Florida after I earned tenure because I got an offer at Teachers College. So I went back to Teachers College. I was there for 12 years. And I was, for 4 years, the final 4 years, I was a department chair of the largest unit within the college, which was an exciting challenge, one I enjoyed very much.
And you survived.
I survived. I'm here to talk about it on the other side. And now I'm very happy to be the dean at Lehigh.
Awesome.
Sounds like an amazing journey. Can you tell us a bit about any tools or books that you use that have really helped you along the way?
I actually, though I'm not trained in philosophy, I've taken courses in it and I really enjoy reading it. Mm-hmm. And so I guess I would point to those books or those works as the most significant in terms of the way that I think. I did a lot with my doc students in reading people like Hans-Georg Gadamer, Truth and Method, and John Dewey's, of course, Democracy and Education, and Michel Foucault, and a number of works, Crime and Punish. But it's not so much that I adopt one point of view, but rather those become facets of my thinking. And I've always enjoyed philosophy in the sense that it provides a kind of expansive landscape for what's possible and what we can think about. So in terms of what's influenced me in terms of books, I guess I would say those are very high order. In terms of devices, materials, I would say, the internet really did come about in the time that I was a teacher. Mm-hmm. And I remember our school was very much a leader in technological development. Mm-hmm. And the internet really opened portals of ways of being that we had never seen available to us. And it was really a cool time to sort of get a sense of the interconnectivity of being. And I think that as a tool is a tremendous tool. Now, it's not always used for the good intentions that might be available to it, but I do think it has the capacity for that. So
that must have been an interesting transition.
It was. I mean, I remember from starting teaching, I had my first year of teaching, I had one mailbox. It was snail mail, and that was it. And then by the second year, I had a telephone in my room, which at the time was highly unusual, with voicemail. And then by the third year, we all had private email accounts with the school, as well as internet connectivity in every classroom and 5 computers per classroom. And that was in 1993, which was very early on. You know, I would do my attendance by computer in those early days. And so it was a good place to be in that you could see the ability of these things opening up. And like I said, it was, you know, a transition to go through that, you know, doing research in that way.
Well, now, Bill, I was a classroom teacher a couple years later, and my first experience with the internet was in the school library, and a senior, was showing it to me, showing me how to get online and showing me some of the stuff that it could actually do.
Wow.
But we were a little bit behind having actual email addresses or computers in the classroom.
Yeah.
Which that came like a little bit later on.
Yeah, it was an unusual school, and it was always in the early days of technology, was lauded as a leader in that area. And so I was just very fortunate to be exposed to it at an early time.
Right, right. Well, you talked a little bit about this idea of teacher development. But maybe you can talk a little bit about this emphasis on global citizenship.
Right. So my teaching preparation was in world studies. And when you spend your time learning or teaching about human rights and peace and geosecurity issues, geopolitics, you quickly realize how important these issues are and how little attention they get on the bandwidth of curriculum. And so it was that experience coupled with I did an exchange program with a school in Russia for 2 years, and we brought students there for a month, and they came and studied with us for a month. And I did the same with the teacher in the school. Oh, wow. And I was there in a very difficult time in Russia. It was 1992, and the economic collapse was so full onset. The ruble was in quick decline, in rapid deflation that was occurring there. And we witnessed sort of firsthand that political and economic transition that was going on. And it was a very powerful emotional experience for my students and for me. It was very much life-changing for me. And I remember vividly being on the bus coming home, leaving the school for the last time in St. Petersburg. And I remember the students, there wasn't a dry eye on the bus. The kids were really upset they had to leave their partners, their friends, this community that we had created over the course of the month. And I remember thinking at that time, like, this was my life's work in some fashion or shape. And so that's really where it started and how it developed from there.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
What is, like, one main takeaway that you had from, like, that experience? Or
Yeah, I'd say one was the recognition that while the particularities exist, and yet there really is a kind of common deep grammar of how people are in the world. And that was evident to me, to these people that were apparently so different, and yet they really weren't fundamentally different. And that was a fairly new understanding for me at that time. I guess the other one was a kind of recognition of the U.S. space in the world. And I didn't really have an outsider's point of view about the United States, and being in the former Soviet Union very much gave you a recognition and awareness of that. I remember when my partner teacher, Dima, came to spend time in my classroom, he was utterly shocked that we started the day with the Pledge of Allegiance. And he said that, you know, he was in St. Petersburg during the height, you know, of the Soviet Union in the 1970s. And he said they never would have participated in such a drill. And if they had, it would have been very perfunctory and, you know, sort of like tongue-in-cheek. Which was such a great insight, because I kind of assumed the opposite, like that they were the nationalistic ones. Right. And yet he was stunned that such a thing happened in this land of the free. You know, I remember him describing it that way. Yeah. So again, insights that you get from the other's perspective was evident to me then.
And as a follow-up, I mean, you're, like I said, you went into this area with global citizenship, but how did your scholarship evolve in such a way, or how do you place yourself within that broader field? Where did the research sort of take you and your name?
In terms of the work, so there are different discourses within global citizenship ed, some that err towards a more, or are prone to a more neoliberal or market-based perspective, meaning we have to prepare kids for the jobs of the future. And I abide some of that. I mean, some of that's true. But by the same token, mine is more of a humanistic approach, which is is that idea that you can understand other people through different perspectives and experiences, and that fundamentally the commonality of humanity is what binds us. And so those kind of principles undergird my version of global citizenship ed, and yet I'm open to conversations with people across the spectrum about what it means and what it can do in terms of learning to live as a planetary society. And I think that's the big challenge for the 21st century, is what does it mean to live as a networked planetary society? And we're not there yet. We have a lot of work to do. And I think we have to put those questions front and center to young people as they develop in their lives, because those are the questions that are going to matter most in the next 80 years.
Mm-hmm. So kind of jumping off that idea of global citizenship and education, do you have any plans for establishing an international education department in the College of Education?
It would more to rather build on the work that's already going on globally within the college. So we have a office for international and online work, and so I think that would be, the strategic initiative would be to build on the work that's already existing, look for new avenues and opportunities to grow targetedly in the way that we do developing programming, developing partnership, developing research collaborations. So it wouldn't necessarily introduce a new department, but it would be continuing to follow that work in ways that was most appropriate and meaningful for both the faculty who are in the college, the partners who are global and are connected with Lehigh.
Okay. And as you were talking, as we think about this idea of partnerships, how do you plan to sort of develop and leverage partnerships at the university with the external community? Yeah,
that's a great question. So I feel that the university for too long has been separate and apart from the communities in which they exist. And there's actually some research that backs that up, that illustrates how universities are, in the United States in particular, are disconnected from the communities in which they serve. And one of the attractions for me at Lehigh, from the president's office all the way down, was wanting to be a part of this community and wanting to move it rather than just to, live side by side, but really live together. So that's a big attraction and something that I'm very passionate about. In my work in New York City, one of the startups that I did was the Global Competence Certificate Program. And in that program, we invited non-governmentals, nonprofits from the city who do similar types of work, like Asia Society and World Savvy, to partner with us in developing that program. And so, to me, it's a very big part of it. So whether it's K-12, whether it's the human services sector and counseling and psychology, really across the spectrum, that there are people that are doing precisely the same work that we care about and are passionate about in the community. And why not build partnerships where they are strategic and necessary? So to me, it's a very high order item, and I'm looking forward to doing that work.
Oh, that's awesome.
And helping to do that work.
Partnerships, I'm really excited about that element and bringing that to the College of Education.
Yeah.
And that seems like a core value of yours. Do you have any other core values that that will become apparent as the new dean?
Sure. I have a deep commitment to equity in education, and I don't know how you can't in this day and age. The chasmic difference between what's available to young people, based purely on geography, is to me completely unacceptable. I am a first-generation college student in my family, and the meaning of that didn't make sense to me until much later about the significance of it. But it's, the product of coming from a relatively poor family and from immigrant stock, by second generation, that you realize how much is afforded to you through education and the value therein. And therefore, it gives me the sense of priority that it's significant and needs to be the same for other people. So that's a very high order item for me, both in terms of working with the community here, but also in the own work that we do in the college. I was just looking at the data, actually, and our college doesn't fare very well with respect to historically marginalized populations and minority populations. Yes. And that's something that I really want to address as dean. And there are a lot of ways to do that, but that's something we have to address. It should be front and center.
Right. And for some of the work we're doing, for me personally, at leadership for Tashina's emerging research agenda, we're also looking at issues of educational equity.
Yeah.
Even in our institution and externally also.
That's right. Too much in our society is determined by dint of one's birth, right, and it really should be about a lot more than that. And that's a chief concern of mine.
Right. Yep. For this show, we're known for having, sort of the basic questions. But we also try to, give you at least one tough one. So don't worry, it's not going to be that big. So what do you consider to be your greatest challenge in your first year as dean in the College of Education?
That's a great question. I mean, I'd say my challenge would be to develop the kind of mutual trust that's needed to really make a great institution, or take a very good institution and to continue to improve it. And I think that's just takes time. And for people to know that there really isn't a hidden agenda, that, I'm saying what I mean and I mean what I say. I just think that's a matter of trust that develops over time. It's not so much a challenge as much as it is a kind of natural way of developing a relationship with people. So that emerges over time. But I would say that's been front and center on my thinking. Because as my colleagues shared with me as I was transitioning into the role, they said, remember that they don't know you the way that we know you. And you have to remember that as part of any new relationship. And when I came here, I literally didn't know anyone except for one person I'd met before many years ago, or a couple of times over the years. So that was a transition for me, and has been part of the transition. But that being said, I felt incredibly welcomed in the first 3 months, and looking forward to the good work we're all going to do together. Yep.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and certainly encouraging for all of us, because I think we're looking forward to those developing kind of relationships. Sort of your vision for where the college is going. Your support. I think it's just a great time in general at Lehigh, for your leadership and sort of the way you see things going. So I think it's so sort of hopefully a win-win.
Yeah,
win-win all the way.
That's the intention. Around. Yeah, absolutely.
And I appreciate your efforts in wanting to be transparent with all of us.
Yeah. As much as possible, I want to do that. I think it helps to build trust. And I spent a lot of time as a regular line faculty member, and so I have a deep understanding of what it's like to be at meetings and have things reported to you, and not have a sense of where did that come from and why is that, and not also have access to those decision points. And so it's not always that it was a bad decision. It was more that people just needed more light of day shining in on the decision process to the extent that that's possible. Right. And so I remember reminding myself of this all the time, that now that you're on the other side, so to speak, as management, you have to remember the life of students and of faculty, because that really is the core work of the university. We can often lose sight of that, but that's really where things happen. It's at the level of faculty and students. So that's so important that we attend to that, and the life world of the people that are doing those jobs and what they do.
Yeah, some of the leadership literature talks about the idea of people certainly listen to what you say, but they watch what you do.
Yeah,
and all the time people are certainly watching to see if you're walking the talk.
Exactly, and it's the same in the classroom, right? Yep. So I learned this as a teacher. You could say one thing and do another. They're going to focus on what you did. So if you really care about being equitable in your classroom, then you behave that way. That value becomes apparent. If you're respectful to students, they become respectful of each other. Like that, you really reap what you sow.
Yep. Yep, it's true.
Well, as our time comes to a close, do you have any final thoughts for our audience?
Final thoughts. Yeah. Well, I think there are big challenges ahead for the educational sector, for human services. And I see those as deeply imbricated with the kind of social challenges that we face. And yet I believe I'm very much an optimist and hopeful that these are opportunities for us to grow, to change, and to develop in new ways that can become more meaningful and congruent with what's going on in society. And I do hope that the university takes seriously this charge, that we can help to energize and play a part in the development of human flourishing. And to me, that's the core value, is the capacity for people to flourish as a core value of understanding of what it means to be human and what we should hope for every other person on the planet. And that really will guide my thinking in large sense.
All right. Excellent. Well, we certainly want to thank Dr. Bill Gaudelli stopping by this time for our show. Tashina, anything else for...
Well, thank you for joining us today, and we'll be seeing you in a month from now.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you once again.